They found a dirty creature on the side of the road, but once it was washed, they were surprised to see what it was. There are lots of creatures that live in Australia which, as people often like to joke, would rather kill you than hug you. However, there are some animals in the country that really are quite cute and that don't want to harm you. But one woman, a farmer called Janelle, never expected to find one of these creatures covered in mud on her property. The farmer had started her day off as normal. She had a lot of work to do that day, as the rainy season had arrived and there had been torrential downpours for days on end. Janelle knew that she would have to check her crops to see if they had survived the flooding or whether they had all been washed out. As the farmer was trekking along her property though, she came across something very strange. In a thick puddle of muddy clay, an animal was lying down, seemingly not moving. The farmer couldn't quite make out what kind of creature it was though, as it was so covered in mud that no discernible features could be made out. It was small though, so the farmer knew that it was likely something harmless and that it wouldn't hurt her should she try to get closer to it. At first, the woman thought that the animal was dead, as something had clearly happened to it during the night. But as Janelle got closer to the creature, she realized that it was actually still alive. Seeing that it was still alive, Janelle quickly called the Wildlife Rescue South Coast, otherwise known as the WRSC, to see if they could come and help the poor animal out. The organization sent one of their volunteers, a man called Gavin Swan, who arrived at the scene as quickly as he could. After he dug the injured creature out of the mud, Gavin was heartbroken to discover that it was a female wombat and that she was barely alive. Sadly, the most humane thing to do for the wombat was to put her to sleep, as she was so injured that there was no way that she would be able to make a full recovery and live a normal life again. It turned out that the previous night, the wombat had been swept off her path home by the torrential rains. Somehow, she had ended up near a horse. However, the animal's luck continued to be bad, as she was accidentally kicked in the head by the horse. This injury left the poor marsupial suffering from severe head trauma. Despite her wound, the wombat was able to make it back to her burrow, which was situated on the side of a dam. But due to the torrential rain, the ground around the animal's home had been turned into a soggy clay soup. After trying multiple times to get into her home, the injured animal eventually gave up due to how exhausted she was and simply lay down in the mud. After euthanizing the wombat, Gavin was able to identify that it was actually a female. After discovering this, the volunteer decided to check the animal's pouch just in case there was a baby hiding in there. Whilst doing this though, the man did not hold out much hope, as if the adult wombat wasn't able to survive the rains, then it was very doubtful that a baby would. But once he checked inside of the pouch, he was shocked to see what was in there. There was indeed a baby wombat in the mama's pouch, but the most amazing thing was that it was still alive. Gavin quickly got the mud-covered animal out of her mother's pouch and washed her off as best as he could. After doing that, the volunteer was surprised to see that it was a baby female wombat. Once he made sure that there were no obvious injuries or wounds on the baby, Gavin wrapped her up in a small blanket and decided to give her the name Mudsie, due to how much mud she was covered in when he found her. Once back at the shelter, Mudsie was given a full health check where it was discovered that she was only 3 pounds, 1.5 kilograms. The young wombat was then given to Lynn Oburn, the wombat coordinator for the International Fund for Animal Welfare. Lynn's love for wombats sees her often rescuing, raising, rehabilitating and releasing injured and orphaned wombats under a license issued by New South Wales Parks and Wildlife. Lynn owns and runs the Wisdom Wombat Refuge, which is located on her property in Kangaroo Valley in New South Wales. It was here that Mudsie found her new home. The young wombat spent 18 months in her new home, and she loved every minute of it. The animal quickly settled into her new environment and even made some new friends, other young wombats who had also lost their mothers to various sad events. The 2 wombats that Mudsie made friends with were 2 females called Tilly and Rosie. She would often be found playing with the 2 as she seemed to enjoy spending her time with them. As time went by and Mudsie began to grow, she quickly grew into a beautiful, pale grey adolescent wombat. As well as her appearance, the young animal's personality also grew with her. She began to become much more cheeky and loved to try and steal any food that she could. As well as that, Mudzi also loved to climb anything she could get her little paws on. All of the employees and volunteers, Lynn included, quickly began to fall in love with the young wombat, and despite the animal's sad start at life, she was full of love and was incredibly affectionate, playful, and happy. It wasn't long before Mudzi was finally deemed ready to be released. She had reached a healthy weight of 52 pounds, 24 kilograms, and had learned all of the necessary skills that she would need to survive on her own in the wild. The animal was released onto some private property which had a soft release system. This is when a new burrow or natural living place is supplied for the rehabilitated animal so that they have somewhere to live whilst they get used to their new environment and habitat. It also allowed the animal to build up a geographic memory of her new territory so that she didn't get lost in her new home. It also allowed Mudzi to leave her scat around her home so that the other local wombats could get used to her. Once she was fully comfortable, she would be able to go off and dig her own burrow so that it was to her liking. Being in a soft release area, the owners and carers of the property where the wombats are released often look after and watch over the progress of any wombats that are left on the property. This means that whilst they try not to interfere with the wombats in order to let them get used to living by themselves, should the animals find the wild too stressful for them, or if they get injured, the volunteers can intervene and take them back to the shelter to live a happier life. Thankfully, in Mudzi's case, the wombat seemed to get on with her new home quite quickly. She was happy to wander around her new environment and get used to all the new sights and sounds that she was discovering. Eventually, she became so accustomed to her new home that she was finally able to be released fully into the wild. Once she was gone, Lynn hoped that the wombat would stay local to the area and perhaps even one day find a mate and have a baby of her own. Although, hopefully this time, she would be able to look after her own baby instead of having it taken in by a shelter. It's thanks to amazing people like Gavin, Lynn, and all of the other volunteers that these amazing animals are able to be given a second chance at life. And despite her tragic start at life, Mudzi was able to make a new life for herself that she was incredibly happy with. What an amazing story! Don't you think so too? Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up to date with all of the new videos posted to my channel. And if you can't wait until then, you can head on over to my channel where you'll find more awesome videos.